I still remember the exact second I knew something was wrong. Not because of the envelope. Not because of the amount written on it. But because of how quiet the street suddenly felt when I opened my mailbox that morning. This was a neighborhood where people waved too much, smiled too wide, and pretended not to watch you from behind their blinds. The kind of place where everything looked perfect, but nothing actually was. Freshly cut lawns, matching mailboxes, HOA-approved paint colors that somehow all looked the same shade of fake happiness. And right there, sandwiched between a grocery flyer and a water bill, was the envelope. White, thick, official. The kind of envelope that doesn't bring good news. I stood there longer than I should have, keys still in my hand, sunlight hitting the driveway just right. For a split second, I thought about leaving it there, pretending I hadn't seen it, walking back inside like nothing had changed. But something in my gut tightened. That instinct you get when life is about to shove you without warning. I tore it open. The paper inside was crisp. Too crisp. Like it had been waiting for me. Notice of violation and final penalty. My eyes skimmed down, expecting the usual HOA nonsense. Grass too long. Trash bins out past 6 p.m. Unauthorized flower pots. I'd seen it all before. This HOA lived for petty control. Then I saw the number. $250,000. I actually laughed. A short, breathless laugh that came out before my brain could catch up. $250,000? I said out loud, standing alone in my driveway like an idiot. I flipped the page expecting a typo. Maybe an extra zero. Maybe a clerical error. No, they were dead serious. Unauthorized structural changes. Violation of community standards. Failure to comply with HOA directives. Accumulated fines. Legal fees. Immediate payment required. My hands started shaking. Not because I was scared, but because I finally understood something I'd been ignoring for years. This wasn't about rules. This was about power. I leaned against my car and forced myself to breathe. Slow. Controlled. The way you do when you know losing your temper is exactly what someone else wants. Because I already knew who was behind this. Her. Everyone in the neighborhood knew her. The HOA president. Linda. Mid-50s. Perfect blowout. Permanent tight smile. The kind of woman who spoke softly but carried authority like a weapon. She didn't yell. She didn't need to. She fined people into submission. I still remember our first real interaction, months earlier. It started with my house. My problematic house. I had bought it quietly. No big moving trucks. No welcome party. No introductions. I liked it that way. I traveled a lot for work, and when I was home I wanted peace. Privacy. Apparently that made me suspicious. The first letter came a week after I moved in. Grass length violation. I fixed it. Second letter. Fence color not compliant. I repainted it. Third letter. Unapproved modifications. That one didn't even specify what the problem was. So I did what any reasonable person would do. I attended the HOA meeting. The room smelled like cheap coffee and false authority. Folding chairs lined up in rows. A faded American flag in the corner. Linda sat at the front like a queen holding court, tapping her pen against a clipboard. When it was my turn to speak, she didn't even look at me at first. "Yes," she said, already annoyed. "I'm here about the violation notices," I said calmly. "I just want clarification." That's when she finally looked up. Her eyes scanned me slowly. Too slowly. Like she was measuring something. "You were informed," she said. "The notices are very clear." "They're not," I replied. "One of them doesn't even say what I violated." A few people shifted in their seats. Linda smiled. Not a friendly smile. The kind that says, "I'm about to enjoy this." "Well," she said, "homeownership comes with responsibilities. If you're unfamiliar with HOA standards, perhaps this community isn't the right fit for you." There it was. The first real threat. I kept my voice even. "I just want specifics so I can comply." She leaned back in her chair. "We'll take it under advisement." The meeting moved on. No resolution. That was the moment I realized something else. She wasn't interested in compliance. She was interested in control. After that, the letters escalated. More fines. More vague language. More pressure. I paid the small ones. Documented everything. Took photos. Saved emails. I dealt with worse people in business. I knew how this game worked. Or so I thought. Because this $250,000 fine, this wasn't pressure. This was a declaration of war. I folded the letter carefully and walked back inside. The house was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that makes your thoughts louder. I laid the papers out on the kitchen table, smoothing them flat like they might make more sense if they looked orderly. They didn't. What they did make clear was the deadline. 30 days. 30 days before legal action.
Lien.
For closure. My phone buzzed. A text from my neighbor, Mark. You get the letter too? I stared at the message. What letter? I typed back. A pause. Then, the HOA thing. They're saying you owe $250,000? Linda was bragging about it at the pool. Bragging. I felt something cold slide into my chest. I asked him to explain. Mark called instead. They're making an example out of you, he said quietly. She said you're non-compliant and uncooperative. That this will show everyone what happens when you don't respect the board. I closed my eyes. So this was planned. Yeah, he said. And, look man, be careful. They're serious. After we hung up, I sat there for a long time, thinking, not about how to fight the fine, not about how unfair it was, but about why Linda felt so comfortable doing this, why she acted like she couldn't lose, why she believed she had absolute authority over me. And that's when I realized the mistake she'd made. A very big one. Because while Linda thought she knew everything about me, there was one detail she never bothered to ask about. One thing no one in this neighborhood knew. Not the neighbors. Not the HOA board. Not even Linda. They all assumed I was just another homeowner. Just another guy who moved in quietly. Just another target. They had no idea why I chose this neighborhood. They had no idea why I bought this house. And they definitely had no idea that I wasn't just a resident here. I was the owner, not just of my house, but of every single property on this street. And soon, they were going to find out. By the next morning, the entire neighborhood knew. I didn't even have to leave my house to feel it. Curtains moved when I stepped onto the porch. Conversations stopped mid-sentence when I walked past. Phones came out a little too quickly, like people were pretending to text while clearly filming. Linda hadn't just fined me. She turned me into a message. I drove to work, but my head wasn't there. Every red light felt longer. Every mile gave me more time to think about what she was trying to do. HOAs don't survive on rules. They survive on fear. Fear of fines. Fear of embarrassment. Fear of being that neighbor. And Linda was very good at manufacturing all three. When I got home that evening, there was a bright orange notice taped to my front door. Not in the mailbox. Not discreet. Right at eye level. Final warning. Non-compliance will result in immediate legal action. It fluttered slightly in the breeze, like it was proud of itself. I ripped it down and felt something inside me shift. This wasn't annoyance anymore. This was personal. I decided to confront her directly. Not by email. Not through certified mail. Face to face. The HOA office sat at the edge of the community. A squat little building designed to look friendly while doing the opposite. Beige walls. Fake plants. A big sign that read, "Committed to community standards." Inside, the air was cold and smelled faintly of toner. Linda's assistant looked up from behind the desk. "Do you have an appointment?" "No," I said. "But Linda knows exactly why I'm here." The assistant hesitated, then picked up the phone. I could hear muffled voices through the receiver. A pause. A sigh. "She'll see you," the assistant said. But only for 5 minutes. Linda's office was immaculate. Too immaculate. No personal photos. No family pictures. Just awards, framed certificates, and a massive HOA bylaws binder sitting open on her desk like a holy book. She didn't offer me a seat. "What can I do for you?" she asked, already knowing the answer. You can explain the $250,000 fine, I said. In detail. She clasped her hands together. We already have. No, I replied. You've accused me. You haven't explained anything. Her smile tightened. You've made unauthorized modifications to your property, she said smoothly. Repeatedly. You've ignored board directives. You've been uncooperative. I complied with every specific request, I said. And when something wasn't specific, I asked for clarification, which you ignored. She tilted her head. That's your interpretation. And this fine? I asked. That's not enforcement. That's extortion. For the first time, her smile disappeared. You should be very careful with your language, she said quietly. We are well within our rights. I leaned forward slightly. Then you won't mind explaining it to my attorney. That got her attention. Her eyes flicked to the binder, then back to me. Of course you're free to consult legal counsel, she said. But I should warn you, HOA law heavily favors the board. Fighting this will be expensive, stressful, and public. Public. There it was again. The threat wasn't just money. It was humiliation. She stood up, signaling the conversation was over. If payment isn't arranged within 30 days, she said, we'll proceed with a lien, and if necessary, foreclosure. I stared at her. This is my home. She met my gaze without blinking. Not if you don't follow the rules. I walked out without another word. Outside, I sat in my car and didn't start the engine for a long time. Because here's the thing no one tells you about power-hungry people like Linda. They only act brave when they think you're cornered. And she thought I was trapped. That night, the harassment escalated. Emails, voicemails, notices. One message informed me that my trash bins were placed 2 inches outside approved alignment. Another claimed my porch light was the wrong temperature. Then came the inspection. Unannounced. 3 board members showed up with clipboards, cameras, and the smug confidence of people who knew they could get away with anything. They measured my driveway, photographed my windows, counted my fence posts. One of them, a guy named Ron who avoided eye contact, muttered, "This is excessive," under his breath. Linda ignored him. By the time they left, they'd added another $15,000 in supplemental violations. I stood in my yard watching them walk away, neighbors peeking from behind hedges like it was some kind of public execution. That's when my phone rang again. "Mark, they're saying if you don't pay," he whispered. "They're coming after everyone who supports you." "What do you mean?" She told people at the meeting tonight that associating with non-compliant residents could lead to secondary inspections. I clenched my jaw. She wasn't just attacking me. She was isolating me. Classic tactic. Turn the community against the target. Make them radioactive. And it was working. The next day, my lawn guy canceled. "Sorry, man," he said. "HOA told me I'm not allowed to work on your property." My package delivery got misplaced. Someone reported my car as illegally parked while it sat in my own driveway. By Friday, I had a certified letter from an HOA law firm. Heavy paper. Heavy words. They weren't bluffing anymore. They wanted blood. That night, I finally made the call I'd been putting off. Not to a lawyer. To my accountant. "Pull everything," I told him. "Property records. LLC filings. Deeds. All of it." There was a pause. "Are you sure?" he asked. "Yes." Another pause. "Did something happen?" I looked around my quiet house, the same one Linda thought she could take from me. "Yeah," I said. "Something happened." The next morning, the neighborhood woke up to something new. A tow truck. My car. Hooked. I ran outside just in time to see it being lifted. "What the hell are you doing?" I shouted. The driver shrugged. "HOA order. Unauthorized vehicle. It's registered. It's insured. It's parked legally." He handed me a paper. "Take it up with them." As the truck drove away, I felt something snap. Not anger. Clarity. They weren't going to stop. Not until I was gone. So I stopped reacting and started preparing. That afternoon, Linda sent one final email. Short, polite, deadly. This is your last opportunity to resolve this matter quietly. Quietly. I smiled for the first time in days, because she had no idea what was coming. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that every fine, every threat, every inspection was being documented, time-stamped, logged, and tied directly back to the people enforcing it. People who believed they were untouchable. They assumed I'd fold, that I'd sell, that I'd leave. They never once asked themselves a very simple question. Why hadn't I? Why was I still here? Why wasn't I panicking? Why wasn't I begging? Why did I look calm? Because the truth was, this neighborhood wasn't my home in the way they thought. It was my investment. And Linda? She wasn't the authority here. She was an employee who had forgotten who signed her checks. And soon, very soon, that was going to become painfully clear. The funny thing about bullies like Linda is that they mistake silence for surrender. When I stopped responding to emails, stopped arguing, stopped showing up angry or defensive, she assumed I was finally breaking. In reality, I was just done playing her game. I spent that weekend doing something she never expected. Nothing. No calls. No complaints. No emotional reactions. From the outside, it probably looked like I'd given up. But behind closed doors, I was building something far more dangerous. Paper trail. By Monday morning, my dining table was no longer a table. It was a command center. Deeds, operating agreements, tax filings, title histories, property transfers. Everything neatly organized in color-coded folders. Red for HOA actions, blue for legal ownership, black for communications. Every fine, every inspection, every threat. And then there was the green folder, the one that mattered most. My accountant showed up around noon, laptop under one arm, coffee in the other. He didn't sit right away. He just stared at the documents. "You weren't kidding," he finally said. "No," I replied. "I wasn't." He looked up at me slowly. "They really don't know, do they?" I shook my head. "Not a clue." He let out a low whistle. "This is going to get interesting." Meanwhile, Linda was busy escalating. That afternoon, a notice went out to the entire community. Not addressed to me. About me. The HOA is currently dealing with a non-compliant resident who has repeatedly violated community standards. Please be advised that enforcement actions are necessary to protect property values. Protect property values. I read it 3 times, because what she didn't realize, what she couldn't possibly realize, was how ironic that statement actually was. By Tuesday, neighbors started knocking on my door again. Quiet knocks. Careful glances over shoulders. Mark was first. "They're saying you're going to court," he said. "Foreclosure proceedings." "Yeah," I replied. "I know." He hesitated. "Why aren't you freaking out?" I smiled. "Because I've been waiting for this part." He frowned. "Waiting for what part?" "The part where they overplay their hand." Linda did exactly that on Wednesday. She scheduled a special emergency HOA meeting. Mandatory attendance. The email subject line alone was aggressive. Community compliance and enforcement actions. I showed up early. Linda didn't like that. She liked being the one who controlled the room. I took a seat in the second row and watched as neighbors filed in, whispering, avoiding my eyes. A few gave me sympathetic looks. Others looked annoyed, like my problems were inconveniencing their peace. Linda stood at the front, flanked by the HOA attorney, a man with an expensive suit and zero warmth. She tapped the microphone. "Thank you all for coming," she said. "This won't take long. It never does when someone enjoys having power." She launched into a rehearsed speech about compliance, standards, and difficult residents who believe rules don't apply to them. Every sentence was aimed at me without saying my name. Then she did something reckless. She put the numbers on the screen. My name, my address, my fines. Gasps rippled through the room. $250,000? Someone whispered. Linda nodded solemnly. "Unfortunately, yes, and that number may increase." I raised my hand. The room froze. Linda's smile faltered for half a second. "Yes?" she said, annoyed. "Can you explain?" I asked calmly. Why none of these alleged violations were ever clearly defined in writing? The attorney shifted uncomfortably. Linda cleared her throat. We've already covered that. No, I said. You haven't. And since this is public now, I think the community deserves specifics. A murmur spread. People leaned forward. This wasn't going how Linda planned. She tightened her grip on the podium. This meeting is not for debate. Then why show my name and fines? I asked. Why make it public? Silence. She recovered quickly. Transparency. I nodded. Great. Then let's be transparent. I stood up. The attorney leaned toward Linda and whispered something urgently. She ignored him. Sit down, she snapped. I didn't. I've complied with every specific request, I said, projecting my voice. And every time I asked for clarification, I was ignored. Instead, fines escalated. Inspections increased. And now foreclosure is being threatened. People started looking at Linda instead of me. That scared her. She cut me off. This is not appropriate. You're right, I replied. What's not appropriate is abusing HOA authority to target a resident. The attorney stood up. Sir, if you have concerns, you should direct them through proper legal channels. I smiled at him. Oh, I will. That smile was my first mistake in Linda's eyes, because she suddenly realized something was off. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't defensive. I wasn't desperate. I was calm. Too calm. After the meeting, Linda cornered me in the hallway. You're making this worse for yourself, she hissed. No, I said. I'm letting you make it worse for yourself. Her eyes narrowed. You think you're smarter than the board? No, I replied. I think you assumed I was weaker than you. She laughed. You have no idea who you're dealing with. I leaned in slightly. Neither do you. That night, the HOA attorney sent a formal notice. Court date scheduled. Lien filing in progress. Foreclosure motion pending. This was it. The moment they believed they'd won. On Thursday morning, I received another call from my accountant. They pulled the trigger, he said. Lien paperwork was filed this morning. Good, I replied. A pause. Good, he repeated. Yes, I said. Now it's official. He exhaled. You want me to send it? Send everything. By Friday afternoon, something strange started happening. Emails stopped. Inspections stopped. The HOA office stopped answering calls. Linda, who had been relentless just days earlier, suddenly went quiet. That's because the first certified letter landed on her desk that morning. Not from me, from my legal team. A notice of ownership clarification. Attached documents. Highlighted sections. Her name wasn't on the letterhead. Mine wasn't either. It belonged to an LLC she'd never heard of. An LLC that owned my house, the houses on either side of mine, the entire block, and quietly, every single property governed by her HOA. She didn't understand it at first. She read it twice, then a third time, and then she called her attorney. The problem was, by the time she made that call, he already knew, because he had received the same letter. And suddenly, all that confidence, all that smug authority, started to evaporate. Linda didn't sleep that night. I know because at 2:14 a.m., my phone buzzed. An email. From her. Subject line. Urgent clarification required. Short. Polite. Panicked. There appears to be some confusion regarding property ownership. Please contact us immediately to resolve this matter. I stared at the screen. Then I closed my phone. Because now the chase had reversed. And Linda was about to learn the most dangerous lesson of all. You should always know who owns the ground you're standing on before you try to burn someone's house down. Linda didn't wait for morning. By 8:07 a.m., there were 3 missed calls from the HOA office. By 8:09, an email marked urgent. By 8:11, a voicemail that sounded nothing like the woman who once threatened to take my home. Her voice was tight, careful, controlled but cracked. There seems to be a misunderstanding regarding ownership documentation, she said. Please call me as soon as you receive this. A misunderstanding. I took my time. I made coffee. I watched the street wake up. I waved at the same neighbors who had avoided my eyes a week earlier. Then I drove to the HOA office. This time, no assistant stopped me. Linda was already standing when I walked in. She looked different. Not polished. Not powerful. Just tired. Her attorney sat beside her. Papers spread out like he'd been awake all night. "Thank you for coming," Linda said quickly. "We need to clear something up." I sat down calmly. "Go ahead." She slid a folder across the table. "My folder. The green one. We received documents claiming your property and several others are owned by an LLC," she said. "This conflicts with our records." "Does it?" I asked. Her attorney cleared his throat. "The documents are legitimate." Linda shot him a look. He continued anyway. "Deeds were transferred years ago. Quietly. Legally. The LLC owns the properties outright." Linda's hands tightened around her pen. "So," she said slowly, "you're a landlord." I smiled. "Try again." Her attorney spoke this time. "The LLC owns the entire HOA-governed development." The room went silent. You could hear the hum of the fluorescent lights. Linda blinked. "That's not possible." "It is," he said. "And it's verified." She looked at me now, not with anger, but with fear. "You let this happen," she said. "You sat there while we find me." Finished. Threatened foreclosure? Harassed my neighbors? Tried to destroy my reputation. She swallowed. "You never disclosed." "I was never required to," I replied. "You never asked." Her attorney leaned back, rubbing his temples. "Linda, we have a serious problem." She turned on him. "Fix it." He shook his head. "You've been fining the owner. Filing liens against your employer." Employer. That word landed hard. Because technically, he was right. The HOA didn't own anything. They managed it. For me. Linda stood up abruptly. "This meeting is over." "No," I said calmly. "It's just starting." That afternoon I sent one email. One. To every homeowner in the community. Subject line: Important update regarding our neighborhood. No accusations. No insults. Just facts. Ownership structure. HOA authority limits. Documented abuses. Financial penalties unlawfully imposed. And then the kicker. Effective immediately. All fines issued in the past 12 months are suspended pending review. My phone exploded. Neighbors. Contractors. Former violators. People who had paid fines they couldn't afford. People who had been bullied into silence. By evening, Linda called an emergency board meeting. Again. Mandatory attendance. Again. But this time, the room felt different. No whispers. No fear. Just anticipation. Linda stood at the front like before, but now she wasn't flanked by confidence. She was cornered. She opened her mouth to speak, and the room turned on her. "What does this mean for our fees? Were the fines even legal? You threatened my elderly mother. You said my house would be taken." She tried to regain control. "Everyone, please." I stood up, and this time, she didn't stop me. "I think it's fair," I said evenly, "that everyone understands how we got here." I walked to the front. The projector came on. Emails, voicemails, inspection reports, patterns, targeting, escalation, abuse. Faces in the room changed as they recognized their own experiences on the screen. Then I showed the final slide. The ownership chart. Silence fell like a dropped glass. Linda's name wasn't on it. Mine wasn't either. Just the LLC. And beneath it, sole managing member me. Someone laughed nervously. Someone else gasped. Linda backed away from the podium like it might bite her. "You can't do this," she whispered. "I already did," I said. Her attorney leaned in. "Linda, you need to step down." She turned on him. "You're fired." He didn't flinch. "I'm resigning." The board followed. One by one. People who suddenly remembered they had families, careers, futures. Linda was alone. By the end of the night, the HOA board was dissolved. All pending fines were voided. A third-party audit was scheduled. Linda was removed pending investigation. She tried to approach me as people filed out. "I was just doing my job," she said, voice shaking. "No," I replied. "You were enjoying it." The investigation didn't take long. Misuse of funds, selective enforcement, retaliation. She resigned before she could be fired. And then came the part no one expected. I didn't sell. I didn't raise fees. I didn't punish anyone. I rebuilt. We formed a new community council, advisory only. Transparent rules, clear communication, actual accountability. People stopped whispering. They started waving again. But this time it felt real. One evening, Mark walked over while I was watering the lawn. "You could have crushed her," he said. "I know," I replied. "So why didn't you?" I turned off the hose. "Because power isn't proven by how hard you hit," I said. "It's proven by how little you need to." He nodded slowly. Months later, I got one final letter. No logo, no threats, just a forwarding address. From Linda. I didn't open it. Some stories don't need closure. They need lessons. And this one had a simple moral. Before you try to control someone's home, make sure you know who owns the ground beneath your feet.